There's a quiet kind of failure most men never notice. It doesn't happen through scandal. It doesn't happen through some public mistake. It happens slowly through your behavior, your tone, your presence, until one day people stop listening, stop looking, stop respecting. Machiavelli didn't fear being hated. He feared being ignored, because being hated means you're still seen as a threat. But being overlooked, that means you've been weighed and found powerless. You don't get warned when it happens. No one says you're starting to lose your power. No one gives you a second chance. They just stop trusting your word. They stop reacting to your silence. They stop fearing your absence. Respect dies quietly, but it starts with signals. Signals you've probably already given away without realizing. Machiavelli studied these moments. He understood. If you can detect what most people do unconsciously to lose respect, you can build an aura so strong, people instinctively bow their behavior around you. This is not about being feared. Not directly. It's about being the type of person who is impossible to dismiss. So here are the first brutal truths. 8 ways you're silently destroying your respect without even knowing it. You talk about your plans more than you execute them. Every time you tell someone what you're about to do, what you're planning, what you're working on, you create expectation, but without outcome. Machiavelli would say, "The promise of power is not power." The moment you speak about a goal, the listener's mind starts a countdown. If they don't see it materialize, you're marked as one more dreamer with no results. Do this too often and your word becomes a liability. You may think you're inspiring people, giving them a vision, but what they actually hear is, "He needs validation before he's earned results." That's weakness. Powerful people move silently until there is something undeniable to show. And then, they don't speak it. They let others speak about it. You over-explain yourself when no one asked. The urge to explain yourself is a subtle sign of insecurity. Worse, it signals to everyone watching that you feel misunderstood. Machiavelli would never explain. He would demonstrate. If someone misjudged his intent, he would remain still. Let them believe what they want until the results destroy the assumption. But when you over-explain, when you try to correct people's perceptions in real time, you're telling them, "I don't believe my actions are strong enough to speak for me." You leak energy. You validate their misunderstanding. And worst of all, you begin to look like a man who doubts his own choices. People don't respect the man who justifies. They respect the one who makes them question themselves for not understanding. You laugh too easily in group settings. Most people believe being likable builds respect. But likability is not the same as weight. If you laugh at every joke, even the ones meant to subtly put you down. If you nod too quickly, smile too often, lean forward in search of connection, you don't look easygoing. You look submissive. Machiavelli knew respect is not created through constant emotional feedback. It's created through controlled presence. People respect the man who withholds his reactions, who smiles slowly, who speaks selectively, who only laughs when something is genuinely worth his attention. The more emotionally reserved you are, the more people project depth onto you. And once they start projecting, they also start respecting. You apologize for things that didn't warrant an apology. "I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I just had a quick thought. I'm sorry I didn't mean to interrupt." These phrases seem polite, but Machiavelli would hear one thing in all of them. "I place myself beneath you." Apologizing is sometimes necessary, but when it becomes habit, it strips you of the subtle authority you carry. Powerful people don't over-apologize. They acknowledge when something must be corrected, then move on. They don't grovel. They don't seek comfort. They adjust quietly and firmly, and the people around them learn, this man may be kind, but he is never small. The moment your language becomes too self-correcting, the room no longer bends toward you. You bend toward it. And Machiavelli would call that a silent surrender. Power is rarely taken from you all at once. It doesn't shatter, it erodes. Slowly, subtly. You walk into a room and the conversations don't shift. You speak, but people interrupt without hesitation. You state an idea and no one follows up. Not with a question, not with challenge, not with agreement. They heard you, but they've stopped considering you. And it's not because you made a mistake. It's because of how you move, how you pause, how you fill silence, how you react to tension without even noticing it. Machiavelli understood this. You don't just teach people how to treat you, you condition them. Every movement, every glance, every non-verbal cue either trains them to respect your presence or ignore it. And you don't get a second chance at conditioning. You fill silence too quickly. Someone pauses. There's tension in the room. Nobody's speaking. So you step in, fill the gap, try to make things smoother. Congratulations. You've just trained the room to expect you to collapse first. Silence is pressure, and most men relieve that pressure before anyone else has to feel it. But Machiavelli knew. The one who controls the silence controls the room. When you leave silence untouched, when you don't rush to fill it with explanation or comfort, you build mystery, you build dominance. People start wondering what you're thinking. They start adjusting their words, and they start giving more weight to the few words you do say. Silence, when held with confidence, becomes a weapon. Use it. Don't flee from it. You react emotionally to small disrespect. You don't need to raise your voice, you don't need to fight. Sometimes all it takes is a sigh, a glance, a smirk. Your face betrays that something got to you. The second people can see your ego bruised, you've lost posture. Machiavelli would say, the man who can be emotionally baited is already owned. Disrespect, especially in public, must be handled like a professional assassin, with no emotion, no explanation, and no delay. But more often, you're reacting in micro ways, laughing nervously when someone mocks you, overcompensating with a comeback that feels insecure, trying to prove yourself with excessive talking. None of it rebuilds respect. It all confirms one thing. You can be moved. You want to be feared? Then be immovable, not aggressive, not loud, just absolutely unaffected. That's what makes them second-guess testing you next time. You repeat yourself after being ignored. You say something. No one responds, so you say it again, louder. Or worse, you reframe it, hoping it'll land better. That's not persistence. That's a public self-demotion. Machiavelli would watch such a man and immediately know he's chasing attention, not commanding it. Power doesn't repeat itself. If your words don't land, you don't chase them. You simply observe who failed to catch the weight of what you said, and then you say nothing more. That silence, it becomes punishment. They feel it. They register the shift, and next time you won't have to repeat yourself. They'll lean in the first time. You constantly seek eye contact for validation. They're talking, you're nodding, watching closely, trying to stay engaged. You think you're building rapport, but what you're actually doing is proving you're lower on the hierarchy. When you constantly look to others for their reaction, their smile, their approval, you become the one who's always checking in. And Machiavelli would know exactly what that signals. He's unsure of his position. He needs permission to be present. True power doesn't look to be seen. It looks through, or not at all. When you withhold eye contact, when you don't react immediately, others start fighting for your attention. And the person who others want to be seen by, he owns the room. Losing respect doesn't start with what you say. It starts with the energy you carry. You can be brilliant, talented, right, and still be overlooked because your presence doesn't broadcast status. Machiavelli knew that if people stop taking you seriously, it's already too late. You don't rebuild respect through words. You rebuild it through a reprogramming of your posture, your silence, and your mystery. You've probably heard the phrase, respect is earned, but Machiavelli would scoff at that idea because in reality, respect is taken quietly, precisely, and often without a word. If you wait for people to hand it to you, you've already put yourself beneath them. Respect is never given freely. It's calculated, observed, assumed, and once it starts slipping, once someone thinks of you as non-threatening, easy to overlook, or too available, getting it back is 10 times harder than keeping it in the first place. So far, we've exposed 8 subtle behaviors that erode respect, behaviors you've likely committed without realizing. But this is where we shift. Because Machiavelli didn't just study failure, he studied dominance through absence, authority through behavior, and influence through perception. In this section, we focus on reversal, how to reclaim respect without saying a word, and how to install behaviors that make even powerful people tread lightly around you. And it begins with subtraction. Stop being too present. People lose respect for what's too familiar. The man who always shows up, always replies instantly, always explains himself, always seeks involvement, he becomes ordinary. Not because he lacks value, but because he's made himself too accessible. Machiavelli would warn, familiarity doesn't breed contempt, it breeds irrelevance. Presence must feel earned. Your time, your thoughts, your reactions must feel like they carry weight, not convenience. Start pulling back, not with anger or coldness, but with composure. Don't respond right away. Don't explain every decision. Don't make every moment a chance to be seen. Instead, vanish strategically. Speak less at the table. Walk away from the center of attention before you're asked to. Scarcity builds value, and when your presence starts to feel rare, people begin to notice it again. And when they notice, they recalibrate their behavior around it. Correct without reacting. Most people, when disrespected, overreact. They get louder, colder, or emotionally defensive. But Machiavelli taught something different. True power corrects behavior without changing tone. If someone talks over you, interrupts you, mocks you in public, don't flinch, don't retaliate, don't feed the moment with energy. Instead, correct it with precision, silence, eye contact, a pause that lingers just a bit too long, a quiet dismissal, or even better, a shift in your posture that tells everyone watching that you've moved from connection to calculation. Correct them, not by fighting back, but by freezing the room around them. Respect doesn't return through argument. It returns when the energy in the room tilts, and suddenly, everyone realizes you are not the same man they thought you were a moment ago. Drop unpredictable silence. Predictability is the enemy of power, and most people are painfully predictable. They smile on cue, laugh on cue, explain themselves on cue, react on cue. You ask them a question, they answer immediately. You insult them, they defend. You praise them, they blush. Machiavelli would watch this and say, he is transparent and therefore controllable. But when you begin to install unpredictable silence, you shatter that illusion. You make them wait. You give no cue. You don't respond immediately to praise or insult. And in that moment of tension, you take control. People start leaning in. They start watching their words. They hesitate. Because silence, in the hands of a man who knows how to wield it, becomes a signal. I am not like the rest of you. You will not read me, and you will not lead me. Reclaim your edge through denial. The man who loses respect is often the man who has said yes too many times. Yes to helping. Yes to showing up. Yes to conversations he didn't want to be in. Yes to people he never wanted around. Machiavelli would tell you, every yes weakens you if it's not backed by advantage. To regain respect, start denying softly but unshakably. Say no without explanation. Turn down invitations with grace but distance. Refuse to explain your schedule. Decline requests that drain your focus or position. At first, people will feel rejected. Then they'll start respecting the boundaries you didn't have the strength to create before. And here's the Machiavellian twist. Once your no becomes credible, your yes becomes gold. That's how respect works, not by pleasing, but by denying strategically. There is no trick to making people respect you. There is only the installation of mystery, control, and selective distance. Machiavelli never demanded respect. He created conditions where people had to offer it, or lose access to something they couldn't replace. And that's the secret. Respect isn't about presence. It's about leverage. Machiavelli understood something that modern people have forgotten. You don't need to be loved. You don't need to be liked. You don't even need to be feared. You only need to be respected. Because respect is the foundation of everything else. It determines how seriously people take your presence. It controls whether your silence creates tension or gets overlooked. It decides whether your enemies plan against you or pause, calculate, and choose silence instead. So far, we've gone deep into the unconscious leaks of power, what you say, how you move, how you react without realizing. But if you want to transform that knowledge into presence, you have to start behaving like a person who no longer trades his dignity for comfort. This final section gives you the code, the quiet rules of Machiavellian presence that build back lost respect without needing permission, pity, or validation. And it starts with the hardest adjustment. Disengage from trying to be understood. Most people waste their lives trying to be clear. They explain themselves, clarify, rephrase, overtalk, hoping the world will finally see them the way they wish to be seen. But Machiavelli knew, if being misunderstood is the price of being respected, pay it. The truth is this: once you stop trying to be understood, you shift into a deeper power, mystery. When you leave parts of yourself unclear, when people don't know exactly what you think, what you want, or how you'll react, they start watching more closely. They start talking about you. They start guessing. And guessing breeds respect, because once people start projecting, they also start protecting. Mystery doesn't repel people. It makes them orbit you. Make your word expensive again. Have you noticed how easily people say, "I promise" now? How quickly they offer reassurances, affirmations, or comfort just to ease tension. That's the modern disease, cheap words. Machiavelli would never offer his word freely. He would delay, withhold, or leave it unsaid entirely until the weight of his silence made people crave it. This is how you reset your presence. Start using fewer affirmations. Don't reassure everyone when they look uncertain. Don't make promises to seem dependable. Don't offer your opinion on every topic. Instead, let your silence speak for you. Let people wait. Let them wonder. Then, when you finally do say something, it lands. Because it had to be earned. Respect increases in direct proportion to how selectively you speak. Guard your emotional baseline. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is to let people pull you up or down emotionally. You're cheerful around one person, cautious around another, angry around the next. They can read your state. They know what you're feeling. And once they know that they can use it, Machiavelli never gave that luxury. He maintained a single baseline, calm, composed, and unreadable. Not robotic, not emotionless, but consistent. You want respect? Then your emotions need to stop being a weather report that everyone can read at a glance. Even in anger, stay calm. Even in chaos, stay slow. Even in excitement, stay composed. Your emotional predictability makes you decodable. And what is decodable is manipulable. Rebuild your value through strategic withdrawal. If you've lost respect, don't try to get it back through more effort. That's what powerless men do. Beg louder, do more, explain further. Machiavelli would instead recommend this: withdraw, disappear, create distance. And when you return with changes so sharp, so clear, that people recalibrate their perception of you without needing a conversation. Maybe you cut out certain people. Maybe you speak half as often. Maybe you dress sharper, speak slower, smile less. Maybe the next time they see you, you're no longer warm. You're no longer available. You're no longer who they once dismissed. You didn't get louder. You didn't get mean. You didn't argue for your value. You made them rethink you. Respect doesn't return with declarations. It returns with distance plus difference. This is what Machiavelli understood better than anyone else. To be respected is not to be praised or even liked. It is to be considered carefully, cautiously, consistently. It is to move through rooms without rushing, to listen more than speak, and to carry yourself like you know something they don't. The man who cannot be read, the man who cannot be baited, the man who does not seek. That is the man who forces others to watch their step. Power isn't taken with noise. It's taken with certainty, not by proving yourself, but by moving in a way that makes others feel uncertain about themselves. Not by demanding respect, but by training people, subtly, unconsciously, to associate your presence with weight, tension, and consequence. Machiavelli didn't just study rulers. He studied the invisible dynamics of power, the way posture rewires perception, the way silence dominates speech, the way what you don't say creates more influence than what you do. And this final part is not about ideas anymore. It's about installation, how you walk, how you speak, how you sit, how you breathe when everyone else is trying to impress each other. Because once these behaviors stop being tactics and start becoming your baseline, people won't just respect you. They'll adjust around you without you ever needing to ask. Make stillness your power signature. In a world of frantic gestures, fast speech, and constant overreaction, the man who moves slowly is immediately feared, even if no one says it. Stillness doesn't just signal calm, it signals control. When you enter a room, don't scan it. When you speak, don't rush. When someone challenges you, don't react. Instead, observe, hold, delay. Let your eyes stay locked without blinking. Let your words arrive like they were already decided, not just improvised. Stillness breaks the social rhythm of most rooms, and once you break that rhythm, you control the tempo. And once you control the tempo, you own the attention. Never speak to fill space. Most people talk because they're afraid of what silence says about them, but you should fear the opposite. Machiavelli would advise, the man who speaks to fill space creates emptiness. The man who fills space with silence becomes the center of it. Stop thinking every silence must be filled. Let others become uncomfortable. Let the pressure of your stillness make them reach, overshare, reveal. You speak only when it adds weight, never when it adds noise, because the more rare your voice becomes, the more sacred your words feel. People begin to brace themselves when you speak. That's the final stage of respect, not fear, not admiration, expectation. Don't defend yourself. Redirect instead. One of the biggest signs of lost respect is the compulsion to explain. Someone misunderstands you, mocks you, calls you out in front of others, and you immediately jump in to defend your honor. You lose instantly. Because defense signals weakness. Defense is reaction. It means you've been touched, affected, penetrated. Instead, you redirect. If someone mocks you, ask them to repeat themselves slowly. If someone challenges you, pause and ask them what they're trying to say. If someone questions your intent, say nothing and let them squirm in their assumption. This is how you turn confrontation into dominance. You're not reactive, you're not flustered. You're curious, controlled, calculating. Machiavelli would rather be misjudged than baited. So should you. Speak in conclusions, not stories. The man who speaks in long explanations loses attention. But the man who speaks in conclusions, short, clean, inevitable, builds gravity. You don't say, I think what we need to do is probably start being more strategic about our approach. You say, that approach won't work again. You don't say, I just think maybe I was misunderstood. You say, if they misunderstood me, they weren't listening. The way you speak trains people to see you as either fog or blade. If your words drift, so does their respect. But if your words land quickly, cleanly, with finality, they start treating everything you say like a verdict. Exit without signaling. Most people wait for social permission to leave. A signal, a goodbye, a closing statement. Machiavelli wouldn't. He would simply vanish when his presence had served its function. You do the same. Don't overstay. Don't overclose. When your purpose is done, leave. This applies to conversations, meetings, relationships, even eye contact. The man who leaves first, with poise, becomes the one who was in control the entire time. It's not about rushing. It's about refusing to anchor yourself to expectation. The longer you linger for others' comfort, the more your respect dissolves into convenience. Be the one who moves when it's time, not when it's polite. Respect doesn't begin with others. It begins with your refusal to explain, chase, or prove. It's in your walk, your tone, your pauses, the way your presence disrupts the room, not through power, but through unreadability. Machiavelli didn't ask to be followed. He just moved in ways that made others afraid to be left behind. You've seen the leaks. You've seen the reversals. Now you install. Because the world doesn't give respect freely. It only gives it to the man who takes himself seriously enough that others have no choice but to follow.